Hello and welcome back to Geek and Speak, the Geek and Seek podcast. Today, we are returning to a series of episodes that you guys have really seemed to like, how to build / how to play. And this time, we are doing Group Hug. This is a little bit of a controversial one. Some people love Group Hug. Some people hate Group Hug. The majority of us are somewhere in the middle, but it's a little polarizing, but should be a fun conversation nonetheless today. Join with me today to talk about Group Hug is Jason. How's it going, Jason?
Going good. I think that we're going to have an interesting conversation here. I've never actually built a Group Hug deck, so it'll be interesting to talk about my perspective on everything. But yeah, I'm excited for a good conversation.
Right on. And then we also have Preston. How's it going, Preston?
Going pretty good. I've also never built a fully blown dedicated group hug deck, so I haven't had the full experience of it, but I've run quite a few of the cards in my deck, so I have some knowledge.
Right on. And I am your host, Morgan. I have played Group Hug quite a bit. One of my favorite decks that I've had for several years is a Group Hug deck. And as Preston has kind of hinted at already, some of the Group Huggy cards just find their ways in other decks because they're fun. And this is Commander that we're talking about. And in Commander, we want to do the goofy fun things. And sometimes that means you're playing Group Hug cards in decks that aren't even Group Hug decks. And that's perfectly fine. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. The cards, the strategy, some of the top commanders, the pros and cons. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So if you would like to support Geek and Seek in all of the shows we have going on, we have a little something else cooking in the background that hopefully will fill in a little upkeep-sized hole in your hearts. So if you want to support us in any way, shape, or form, do all the YouTube algorithm things. Like, comment, subscribe, share, all those things. Yeah, I knew there was a word I was forgetting. And also check out all of our other videos because that's a great way to help us in the algorithm. And then if you want to go the extra mile, you can head over to patreon.com/geekandseek YouTube. Any money we make over the next month or so between ad revenue and Patreon is going directly to Jason and Preston to help us out at MagicCon Vegas. That's right, the three of us, your favorite podcast hosts, the most handsome boys in the Midwest. We are all heading out to MagicCon Vegas. So if you're going to be there, come say hi. Let's jam a game, whatever. We're going to be there. So we hope to see you there. All right. So the first thing on my note sheet today was, what is our experience with Group Hug? Wait, no, that's the second thing. Back up. What is Group Hug? We need to define Group Hug. So Jason, to the best of your ability, describe to the viewers what Group Hug decks are.
So when I think of a Group Hug deck, I envision a deck that has ways of benefiting everyone at the table in one way or another, or in every way. It can draw everyone cards. It can generate everyone mana. It can make everyone's creatures bigger. It's a deck that isn't necessarily designed to win in any particular way. It's just something to help promote fun and exciting games by allowing everyone else at the table to do what their deck wants to do.
Yeah, I mostly like that definition. I think that's pretty good. Anything that he might have missed, Preston?
I think that's what people typically do with group hugs, but like every once in a while, someone have like something they are trying to do, maybe something that's not quite as fun, and they're using that group hug as like a safety shield before they introduce the nasty stuff. So that's a kind of also a common one, but yeah, I think overall the most played version is, I just want everyone to do their thing for a couple hours, have a good time, give everyone some resources, see what happens.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about like what the win cons of Group Hug decks are, because contrary to popular belief, there are some win cons for Group Hug decks. So we will talk about that a little bit today. But yeah, I liked your guys' definitions. I think that a good way to think about it is just like, we're going to give everyone some value so we can all have fun. Because like in a perfect world, a good Commander game is a Commander game where everyone's deck kind of gets to do their thing. And Group Hug just increases the chances that that's going to happen. But as Preston has also pointed out, that sometimes means the games will be very long because everyone's also going to have all their answers and blah, blah, blah. So sometimes it makes for really long, brutal, chaotic games. So we already kind of talked a little bit about our experience. So let's get a little bit more specific about that. So the group hug deck that I have and have had for a very long time is Kenrith the Return King. So this deck is playing a lot of the traditional group hug cards that you would expect. I'm drawing people extra cards. I'm giving them extra lands here and there. But really, my favorite part about the deck is I have a lot of cards that reduce the activated abilities on Kenrith so that I can use Kenrith's abilities to make deals with people. I can give their creatures haste and trample. I can grow creatures. I can gain people life. I can draw cards, and I can reanimate stuff with Kenrith. And, a lot of the times I'm just going to use those abilities on myself because, like, whoa, you can't kill the group hug guy. I'm helping everyone. But the reason he's here is to make deals with people, and it's a good time. So what have you guys thought about my group hug deck? Because it's been in our play group for a really long time. It was an early-ish deck. Like, I think I probably built it like in my second, maybe third year of playing Commander. So what have you guys thought about my Kenrith group hug deck? Because even though Jason hasn't had experience playing group hug, he has definitely played against this deck.
So I think that Kenrith is a fun deck to bring to the table, especially the way that you've got it built, because I know that, if things aren't going the way that I want for me in the game, I could just be like, hey, Morgan, I could kind of use some help over here. I'd appreciate some help over here. And, at the very least, I know that you're going to have ways that might allow me to get to a position where I can actually make something happen in the game and not just sit there and twiddle my thumbs being screwed on mana or not drawing into any gas or having creatures that can't get through, stuff like that. The closest that I've ever been to playing with a group hug deck was I used to have a Xyrus, the Writhing Storm. And that wasn't really group hug. I mean, it kind of was, but not really, because it was just it was wheels is what it was. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to draw you some cards, but you're going to throw those cards into the graveyard and draw more cards. And, it's only really going to benefit me. And I'm going to make 30 tokens in one turn. So I never really considered that to be a group hug deck, even though I was able to draw everyone a lot of cards with it. I never advertised it as a group hug deck. Now I would fall into that, hey, you're going to do that to me. I just drew you some cards. I would definitely try that, but I never once would advertise that as a group hug deck.
Yeah, last year in Vegas, I played against a Xyrus the Writhing Storm deck, and it's for those who don't know, it's for 2 and Teamer, 3/5 Snake Leviathan with flying. Whenever an opponent draws a card except the first one they draw on each of their draw steps, you create a 1/1 green snake creature token, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each draw that many cards. So I did play against that deck in Vegas last year, and it was a group hug deck. But what ends up happening is that, eventually you're like, oh, wait, I'm going to die to commander damage, or milling out is not out of the question, or they get like the artifacts that say when you draw a card, you take a damage, or if you have more than 4 cards in your hand at your end step, you lose some life, or, they were playing all of those things. So it was group hug, but there was a clock, you had a finite amount of time to enjoy the ride. Yeah, so we'll get a little bit more into that in a few minutes, but that already is starting to get into the a little bit down the line of like, hey, these group hug decks can actually have win cons. You actually can win the game and kill people. Preston, you just built a. This isn't necessarily a group hug deck, but you also just built a Kenrith the Return King deck that's very politics based. And I think that while that is not necessarily a group hug deck, I would like you to explain to the viewers how the deck works and this little mini game that you created into it, because I think that has something that we should capitalize on as part of this discussion about group hug decks.
Yeah, so I finished putting that deck together a couple weeks ago, play tested it once, definitely going to have to work around it to get people more interested in playing with the mechanic. But basically, I use counter stability. If people want them, they can just ask me and I'll use them if I can. And then they'll get this little emblem. And what these emblems do is when I'm using cards that have the voting mechanic, you lose those emblems, and I get to decide how you vote for the turn. So that's the goal of the deck, and I need to tweak it out. I've had a couple ideas since we played it because you guys were like, I don't want to do it. So, but I think I found a way to at least next time we get together, I can try it out.
In our defense, Preston, some of the voting cards would literally let you win the game if you decide how we vote. Well, yes, most of them are bad, but that is like scary still. Yeah,
most of them are fine.
I will accept that.
So the reason I specifically wanted Preston to bring up that deck is because I think there's an interesting part of this discussion when it comes to group hug decks, right? So group hug decks are often they lean really far into the multiplayer aspect of the game, right? In the nature of Commander, because in 1v1, you would almost never draw your opponent's cards. You would almost never give your opponents resources. You would never do something that would give you a disadvantage in order to give your opponent an advantage. You would almost never do that in 1v1. But in Commander, where we have politics, it goes bananas. But I think that is part of why some people don't like group hug. There's a second reason I think a lot of people don't like group hug, and we'll talk about that next. But this first one is I think sometimes people get tired of the politics. I think sometimes people think that the politics goes too far. And, that's, I think, one of the great parts about Commander, because if I'm going to play Commander, I want to lean into all the things that are different about it than the other formats. But I could see where some people are coming from. Like if you only play Commander and you don't play other formats, there does come a point where the politics might be like, oh my God, can we just play a game? Can we just attack each other? Can we not have to make all these deals all the time? So what do you guys think about that? Is there a point where maybe in Commander in general, people take politicking too far, but do you think that is exacerbated by these politics / group hug decks?
I think because it's a multiplayer format for the game, I think that type of stuff needs to be talked about when you rule zero a bunch of things. If you're not really looking for too much politicking going on in the game, say that up front. And, if you're at a table and you're playing a deck that, does a lot of politicking and somebody says that they don't want to do a lot of politicking in the game, I mean, at that point, you have a decision to make. Either you say, hey, I'm still going to play this deck and there is a decent amount of politicking involved, or you switch decks. But to me, it's kind of a fundamental part of our game. You have more than one player at the table, and oftentimes in Commander games, one player becomes a problem. And so the three people team up on that one player. That goes into politicking. You can't tell me it doesn't. Like if everyone at the table understands that this person is the threat and the three of us need to go after them, that's basic politicking for Commander. I mean, you could definitely play Lone Wolf and be like, nah, they're really scary, but I'm still going to do my thing. And if I have to attack you, I will. Then that's fine. But most of those games, you're probably not going to win or have a chance to win. I mean, I say most, it's not guaranteed, but most of the time, you're probably not going to win that game if you're not helping the other two people at the table go after the person who's in the lead. And then on the other end of it, not even just, politicking when you have to, but if you want to get some sort of extra value without having to play a spell or having to sacrifice something on your board or have to do anything, and you could just get something that you want just by talking to somebody about it, why wouldn't you? I certainly wouldn't hate anybody for trying that. I kind of view it the same way that I view professional athletes and getting paid a bunch of money. It's like, do I think that someone should get paid $100 million or so to play a sport? No. But do I hate these guys for trying to get as much of the money as they can? Absolutely not. So just because you might not think that someone should be doing that, it's kind of like a, don't hate the player, hate the game type of situation.
So your recommendation is that people should go try standard. All right, got it. Preston, anything that you would like to add to that?
I mean, yeah, I mostly agree. Politicking is one of my favorite parts about the format. It's one of the reasons it's what I want to play usually when I'm playing Magic. It's always leading to fun stuff. But in people's defense, I've also been at tables where every little politicking thing takes like 3, 4, 5 minutes. And it's like, oh, if you block my Solemn Simulacrum and let me draw a card, I'll do this. And like that should be a 10, 15-second discussion, but it takes them 5 minutes to agree on something. I've had that happen, and that can be a little miserable when you get stuck in those. But normally, I think politicking is very fun and one of the main draws of it.
Yeah, sometimes people will be at the table and they'll be politicking and they'll turn it into a political debate. And then they're just going back and forth for several minutes. And then you're just at the table, not a part of this deal at all. And you're just like, can we please just make something happen so we can get to my turn again? I understand that. And at that point, I feel like it's just about being courteous to the other players at the table and being, considerate of their time.
Yeah. And I do wonder if that's, again, why maybe sometimes these games, Commander games sometimes take a long time anyways, but like, especially if you got the group hug kind of decks, why sometimes maybe they take a little longer because they're leaning into a little bit more to these weirder parts of the format. So that's probably the reason I think some people really don't like group hug. But then the other thing is, people really don't like chaos decks, and I actually don't think that I really don't think that group hug is that different. So, for example, it's obviously not the same caliber, but I think it's at least in the same. They're at least similar enough that this is worth bringing up. Is like, think about cards like Rite of Flourishing, right? This is according to EDH Rec, 70% of group hug decks, and that would make it like the most played, I think. It's at a 3-mana enchantment. At the beginning of each player's draw step, they draw an additional card. And then each player may play an additional land on each of their turns. So that's checking the two main things for group hug. You want to give your opponents more resources. You want to give your opponents more cards. But the problem is I remember when Miss Bumbleflower came out, right, in the Bloomborough precon, and everyone was talking about group hug again. It was like the hot discussion because that commander, that precon were so popular. So like Command Zone and I think Goldfish were all making videos about how to do group hug in the most efficient way possible. And something that they brought up multiple times was that if you're focusing more on giving your opponents cards, you should try not to let them get more mana. Let them have to figure that part out themselves. And then vice versa. If you're giving your opponents more mana, try not to give them cards very much. So that way you still, you can like kind of work around this a little bit better, right? But the problem is that a lot of the popular group hugs do both. Rite of Flourishing does both. And Rite of Flourishing is also a card that you would play in a lot of chaos decks for that same reason, is you're just like, let's just see what happens. And so what do you guys think of that take of like, maybe part of why some people don't like group hug is because it's like at least sort of related to chaos, as far as just like, let's just let the world burn and see what happens and let crazy things happen?
I think that if someone doesn't like group hug, it more goes to like them just blaming the group hug player when the game takes a bad turn. Like, oh, well, if you weren't helping them draw so many cards, they wouldn't have gotten to that. Or if you didn't, ramp them so much, they wouldn't have enough mana to do all that. Or, and everything's your fault. And it's like, hey, I've been helping you out too, and you haven't been able to do anything to either, stop that or beat that. So, but I think that's what I've experienced more is when, I've seen people not a huge fan of group hug. It's always like, well, if you were playing a different deck, the game would have gone different. That's kind of the argument that I see a lot of the times.
Well, I don't like chaos decks, but when it comes to group hug cards, there's two different kinds, like primary group hug cards. There's some that literally affect every person, and there are some where you choose the people and they do different things for different people. Like Miss Bumbleflower is an example, Shadrick Silverquill. So like there's certain ones where, that goes into the politicking thing. Oh, I'll use this effect on you and I'll use this one on you. That can slow games down. If you're not getting the good stuff, that can make people upset. Like, you're always picking the other two guys. I'm not getting anything here. This is unfun. But if you play the ones that affect everyone, then yeah, it can be like kind of spiraling out of control sometimes, like giving everyone cards and mana with something like Rites of Flourishing, that can maybe make the game go a little faster or last longer, depending on how lucky people get with the stuff that they draw.
It also depends on the level of which you're playing too, right? Like if people are not playing a lot of interaction, they're not playing a lot of targeted removal, they're not playing a lot of board wipes, then it's really just going to be whoever draws into their haymakers first, right? And then in that case, it might be a really quick game. But then if you're a play group that plays a lot of interaction, then all of a sudden, we're settling in for a very long game. So I like what you were saying about Bumbleflower. I think that's very true, that there are a lot of these cards that are more targeted and more less group hug and more like a homie hug, just one hug. But
they've been doing that more recently. With newer group hug style cards, they're doing more that are like targeting specific people with stuff.
Yeah. Secret Rendezvous is kind of an all-star card that I really like that does that. So what do you guys think about king making? Do you think that like a lot of casuals also just don't like king making? Because that almost sounds like what you're talking about, right? If people are going to get salty that you're not picking them, right? Like that they think you're giving one of the players maybe too much of an advantage. Do you think that that's something that you need to be wary of if you're playing group hug or you're going to build a group hug deck? Should you be so king making would be that you just like throw someone the game, and I think that just accidentally happens sometimes in group hug. How much do you think people need to be worried about that if they're going to build a group hug deck?
I mean, you can do that with any deck style. Like you can accidentally like set yourself up to where you basically take one person out, leave yourself defenseless, and then the third person comes in and wins. You can do that with any deck. Group hug, I guess kind of can do that a little more often since it's helping people, especially the newer cards are helping certain people more. But that's just Commander at a certain point.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Although I will say I think it's a little bit easier than you might think for a group hug deck to king make. But I don't think that the majority of people who play group hug decks actively do that. I think it's like what you said, Morgan, where that just kind of happens on accident, because it really just depends on how good the cards that people are drawing are, or, the type of deck that they're playing, how good their deck synergizes, no matter what cards are in their hand. I think that that's a bigger factor than, just the person who's playing group hug put that person in a position to win, therefore they king made. One person might be drawing all the perfect cards and another person might be drawing, some really high cost mana stuff and no lands, or all lands and then no gas to do anything with those lands. It all just kind of boils down to how lucky you get when you draw and how well you shuffled.
Well, and Magic is just a game of randomness. And that's even more so in Commander, where it's a singleton format. So yeah, I can get behind that. I think it's something that maybe you should be aware of, is like if you're going to build a group hug deck or you're playing it, is like be aware of that. Like king making can sometimes feel bad to the other players, so like try not to do it intentionally. Try to be aware of where you're spreading your resources and how you're using your cards. But I think in general, it can just happen on accident sometimes, and that's okay. That can happen in any other archetype. Just, lean into your win cons, which is what we're going to talk about now, is how the heck do you win in group hug? Because a lot of people just play all these group huggy cards and then they're like, wait, I was supposed to find a way to win? How do I do that? So I'll tell you guys about my favorite win con in Group Hug. We talked about this a little bit before we started filming. This is Folio Fancies. I have this in my Group Hug deck, and it's for 1 and a blue. It's an artifact that says players have no maximum hand size, which is great when you're drawing them a bunch of cards. Everyone gets to hold on to all their goodies and play more of their crazy things. Then you can pay double X, tap it. Each player draws X cards, but then, most importantly, you can pay 2 and a blue, tap it. Each opponent mills cards equal to the number of cards in their hand. So this is early game, just letting people hold on to their neat toys. Maybe you're going to draw some people some cards with it. But really, you kind of, after you have been doing the Group Hug thing for a while, people's decks start to get a little small because they were playing all the things that let them draw cards by themselves. And you're adding to the fire by letting them draw more cards. So now, milling them out is actually realistic. So what do you guys think about Folio Fancies? And are there any other win cons that you really like for Group Hug decks?
Well, for me, I know that if I was going to build a Group Hug deck, I'd probably end up going the life gain route to a certain extent because that's just my favorite thing to do. So stuff like Felidar Sovereign, where you win the game if you have 40 or more life at your upkeep, that's probably what I would say. Like if I wanted to build a Group Hug deck, that might be something I try to focus in on. But yeah, I do like Folio because sometimes with like the blue Group Hug decks, they're more focused on the getting myself drawing all my cards, and then Lab Maniac or whichever Jace lets you win the game if you would draw with nothing in. So Folio, I think, is a little bit more unique of a way to close it out.
I think Folio is probably one of the better ways to win if you're going to go the card draw route, because it is kind of a card that will fly under the radar most of the time, I feel, because people will see that and they'll be like, oh, wait, you're going to draw me as many cards as I need? Cool. Sweet. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I have to get rid of them.
And it's only until it becomes too late that you realize that you need to get rid of that Folio Fancies. A card I think more people will use as a win con in Group Hug in that situation is like Labman or Thassa's Oracle. The ones where, you win the game for not having any cards in your library. There's also like Trisca Decaile, where it's like if at your upkeep you win if you have 13 or more cards, 13 cards exactly in hand, and it has a card draw ability, like an activated ability that will draw you cards that doesn't require it to tap. Probably, I honestly think that the damage ones for people drawing cards is probably my favorite way. So like Razorkin Needlehead or the new one from
Trap Trawler.
No, I mean, Scrap Trawler, yes, but the one that's I saw it on this list a second ago. Scrawling Crawler.
Oh, I knew it was something like that.
Scrawling Crawler. And then there's the 20-toed toad from Bloomborough. That's from Bloomborough, right? 20-toed toad. That's just fun to say. And it says you win the game on it, so it's got to be a good card, right?
Yeah, so I do like these punishing draws. Like if you're going to be playing all these things that let them draw extra cards anyways, like the milling them out option with Folio is obviously an option, but also you could just be damaging them while they're doing it, because that also makes these kind of effects like Scrawling Crawler, which is I think my favorite of these effects because it's also a little dude and he's also fueling the fire. He's helping with the drawing extra cards. Really like this card. These are good earlier in the game because they're putting a clock on the shenanigans that can ensue. A similar card that I have in my Group Hug deck is there it is, a Descent into Avernus. I couldn't remember what it was called, which is a enchantment that gives people's treasure tokens, but then it's also dealing damage. So these like
putting a clock on the game.
Yeah, this ends games really quick. It's giving people their extra resources, but you're putting a clock on it. You're like, all right, you only have so long to find answers or win, because I'm damaging you pretty quickly. The last win con that I think is more deck specific is in my group hug deck. One of my win cons is Zakama Primal Calamity, which is the 9/9 dinosaur with vigilance, reach, and trample. If you cast it, you untap your lands when it resolves, and then you can pay 2 in a red, deal 3 damage to a target creature, 2 in a green to destroy an artifact or enchantment, or 2 in a white to gain 3 life. And because my group hug deck is Kenrith, and I'm playing all these things that reduce the cost of activated abilities, Zakama just accidentally is a good win con in there. Because I can be political with it in the same way I can be with Kenrith, but Zakama is a much scarier threat than Kenrith ever wishes he could be. So that's more deck specific, but that is a win, one of the win cons in my group hug deck, and I think that those options shouldn't be overlooked. Like, you don't have to completely go the mill 'em out plan, or the laboratory maniac plan, or the damage as you go plan. Like, those are great options, but like, hey, you're giving yourself a bunch of extra cards, you're giving yourself a bunch of extra mana. You can just play the big old Timmy cards you like. This is Commander after all. Like, no one's gonna judge you for playing the big old scary guys while you're doing that.
See, a card I didn't know existed that I see on this list on EDH that it almost makes me want to build it like a group hug deck just so I can get a win with this, is Walking Archive. So it's a 1/1 artifact creature golem for 3. It has Defender, and it comes into play with a +1/+1 counter on it. And it says at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player draws a card for each +1/+1 counter on Walking Archive. And it has an infinite mana sink where you could put +1/+1 counters on it. So if you just generate infinite mana, you put 100 +1/+1 counters on it, and then pass the turn, and then just win.
I think it is hard to go infinite with it because it's specifically 2 white and a blue. So you have to make
sink. You have to be able to make mana of any color.
Yeah. So it's a little bit harder, but still.
It's just the fact that you don't have to tap it.
Yeah. Or if you have Kenrith as your commander for your group hug deck, Kenrith can put counters on things even cheaper. So then you just have to make infinite green mana, right? That's even easier.
Hey, that's even easier.
Yeah, so that's kind of fun. And if you have to die, right? If you have to go out, isn't like drawing too many cards like one of the more fun ways to have to go out, right? It's one of the more more entertaining ways to die.
Oh yeah.
See, but you like, as the person who is playing this card, you wouldn't lose at all because you just put the counters on it, and then you don't even have to attack with anything else or do anything else. You literally get it to 100 +1/+1 counters and then pass the turn, and everybody loses.
That's so funny. All right, let's go ahead and talk about maybe a couple of our other favorite cards in the group hug category. Jason, do you have a favorite card that we haven't brought up yet?
No, we actually talked about my favorite like cards that I would play in group hug. But I will say, you can just, if you're going to play a group hug, you can kind of do it with your commander as the win con, just depending on what you're going for as far as the build. Like Nekusar is a great example for that, because Nekusar is dealing damage to people when they're drawing cards.
It is funny seeing that as one of the commander options on EDH Rec for group hug, because that's usually like, oh, it's the wheel commander, but like,
right.
It's kind of like doing the scrap trawler thing. Not scrap trawler. The one the one from Foundations. Like, it's kind of doing the same thing. Like, you get to draw cards, but got a clock on it.
And I do really like Xyrus, the Writhing Storm, as a group hug commander, because it just, you draw cards with people and you're dealing damage to them. You don't even have to go crazy into like wheels or extra draws for people. You could just kind of build up your commander and just be like, hey, let me hit you for like 5. We'll each draw 5 cards. Sounds good, right?
Yeah, and then your win con's commander damage.
Yeah. And a card on here that I actually really, really, really like as a group hug commander is the Ian Malcolm. How do you say it? Chaotician.
Yeah, it's from the Jurassic Park secret
Jurassic
lair.
Park, yeah. So it's whenever a player draws their second card each turn, that player exiles the top card of their library. And during each player's turn, that player may cast a spell from among the cards they don't own, exiled with Ian Malcolm, Chaotician, and mana of any type can be spent to cast it.
I do like that one. That's definitely like kind of leaning into my hypothesis about the gray area that is between Group Hug and Chaos, because that also is a card that, like, if I was playing a Chaos deck that had blue and red in it, I would be like, I wonder if I want this, because it's kind of funny.
It's pretty funny because you're exiling your stuff, but then you're playing other people's stuff. You don't get to play your stuff, so that's just kind of fun.
Yeah. What about you, Preston? Any standout cards that we haven't got to talk about yet?
I mean, the one I've probably played the most over the years is Rites of Flourishing, which we already talked about. So, I mean, there's a lot of fun ones here that I've either put in decks or I would be interested in putting in decks. Let's see. Is there one that really catches my eye? Oh, Communal Brewing. That's a newer one that I kind of like.
Yeah. What's Communal Brewing do?
Yeah, so it's 2 and a green for an enchantment. When it enters any number of target opponents, each draw a card. Then you put an ingredient counter on Communal Brewing. Then put an ingredient counter on it for each card drawn this way. Oh yeah. So you put one on for sure, and then for each person you let draw a card, you put another one. And then whenever you cast a creature spell, that creature enters an additional plus X, additional +1 counters, where X is the number of counters you put on it. So you give people cards, and then all the creatures you cast get to be bigger. So it's an actual way to win the game without making people angry when you first do it.
Sorry, I'm just looking at this. I'm looking at this list on EDH and I'm looking at the enchantments. Rhystic Study is listed here. That is not a Group Hug card.
Nah, but people
not
play
even
it. It's just a ridiculous card. People like it. And
I mean, it goes into a deck that
it just goes in most blue decks.
A Group Hug card, it is not.
No. Yeah, so Communal Brewing, I do like that one, Preston. I haven't got to play it yet, but it's from the Bloomborough Precon with Miss Bumbleflowers, where it's originally from. And that was just like a sub theme of the deck was like +1/+1 counters, and that's like that's a real win con. Like if you are a Group Hug deck, yeah, you want to do all the Group Huggy things, give your opponents the value, but you're making your creatures bigger, so you can actually back it up and defend yourself and or wipe them out. So I like that.
I also I remembered a card that's on this list that I do really, really, really like, and I play it in decks that aren't Group Hug decks at all. It's I think it's I'm trying to get it pulled back up. I think it's Tidal Wave Barracuda.
Oh, what is that?
That's what it's called.
What's that? What's that do?
It's players can play spells as though they had flash, but players can't cast spells during your turn.
So it gives you a little bit of protection, right? The people aren't going to be counterspelling you. They're not going to be like flashing in their blockers and stuff. So you can still do your thing, but like you can let crazy things ensue on the other player's turns.
Yeah, it's 3 and 1 blue for a 3/4, and yep, any player can cast spells as though they had flash, but your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. It itself doesn't have flash. I think that would be pretty fun if it did, but I see why it doesn't. It gives everything else flash anyways. But that card I play in other decks because it's just really good. And what I found most of the time that I play this card, people just kind of leave it alone because they like yeah, you get kind of an advantage from it. But if I'm going to try and do something to you, I would like to try and do it during my turn. So people often it goes overlooked, and most of the time it's gotten destroyed when I've had it. It's because everything was getting destroyed. Very rarely have I seen people target this thing specifically.
Yeah, it seems like a cool one. I feel like I should just try it out in a couple of my blue decks and see what I think about it, because it definitely seems fun. It definitely seems like wild things will happen.
I feel like I've never seen that card.
Really? I've definitely played this card. In our games.
Seth played it recently on Commander
Clash.
Clash. I can't remember what it was for. I think he might have just been like, hey, this is neat. Let's see what happens. But that's why I would play it, so I get it.
Oh, it's actually really fun. Every time I've played this card, I've had fun with it. And it's funny to get people in like one of those gotcha moments. Because like you try to go off on your turn and you do something, and then somebody tries to cast something to counter you or stop what you're doing, and you're like,
actually,
you can't do that, sir.
you just push up your glasses. Actually. So a card that I feel like we can't not talk about is oh no, how do I say this? Kinoas and Tiro of Minas Tirith. This is the face commander from the Group Hug Precon that they did in 2016. And this was a pretty popular precon. It had a lot of problems with it. Like back then, precons just weren't as good, and also I think the designers may have misunderstood a lot of our discussion today of like, what's the win con? Because this deck was not very good at winning the game. But this is a card that people still play. I think it's it's one of the most, if not the most still played, most played group hug commander. It's for one of each color except for black. It's a 2/8 human soldier. At the beginning of your end step, draw a card, and then each player may put a land card from their hand onto the battlefield. Then each opponent who didn't draws a card. So it's a good blocker, so you can kind of protect yourself from all the crazy things that are going to happen. But you're also drawing everyone some cards. You're giving everyone some mana, so it kind of checks all the boxes. So if you got the colors for it, it's still a really really good option as a commander, and it's in the 99 of my group hug deck. And I've thought about cutting black from my group hug deck and making this the commander, just because like black's the color I have the least amount in my group hug deck. But then I would actually have to change my deck quite a bit because I have all the, cards that reduce the activated abilities on Kenrith and blah, blah, blah. So like I would have to change my deck so much that I'm probably not going to do that. And then the one last card I want to shout out that is a lot of fun, and also a card that we can kind of play in decks that aren't just group hug decks just because it's a fun commander card, is Humble Defector, which is for 1 in a red, a 2/1 human rogue that you tap it, draw 2 cards, target opponent gains control of it, activate only during your turn. It's a group hug card because you're, quite easily going to be able to draw your opponent's extra cards with it. It's a fun politics card because you can kind of, try to get some leverage on where it's going to go and whatnot. So it's a really fun card for group hug decks, but obviously it's good in a lot of other strategies. But I wanted to give that card a shout out because it was high up on the EDH ranking, and I totally agree. It's in my group hug deck. I've seen it in a lot of the other group hug decks I've played against, but it's just a fun card, and I think sometimes people forget about it because I don't see it as often as I used to, just like in normal red decks, because red decks have gotten better at card advantage. There was a time where red decks would just play this card because they're like, I need to have a way to draw cards. But I think it's still a really fun commander card.
But also, I think sometimes it's beneficial to play these group hug cards in non-group hug decks because it's going to give you an advantage, but also just playing something that can give you some kind of goodwill at the table, it can matter a lot more than you think it does. We joke about how, trying to get somebody to not do something like, oh, hey, I drew you a card, you're not going to do this to me. But that's real. Like, people actually do that in games. So sometimes just having those cards in and being able to generate some of that goodwill at the table can help you avoid, taking damage or being attacked or having a thing countered or having a thing blown up. Sometimes it matters.
Yeah, I agree. So, we're kind of getting to the end. I feel like we've talked about a lot of the staples. We've talked about a lot of the pros and cons of it's fun, but it's also, going to irritate some people with all the politicking. But what other last bits of advice would you give anyone who either has a group hug deck and wants to get better at playing it, or anyone who is thinking about building a group hug deck and they haven't yet?
I want to say this. If you're playing a group hug deck, you cannot get mad every game or even most of the games if somebody kills you, like first or second or something like that. You can't fall on, oh, I was just trying to help everybody out. Why'd you kill me? That's not you don't win Commander by being the player who helped everyone the most. you win Commander by being the last player alive. So, sometimes people just aren't going to be here for the group hug stuff, and they're going to want to take you out because all you're doing is helping out other people, and you're not building up your board state and not being able to protect yourself as well. So just, don't be salty if somebody isn't feeling too friendly and wants to have a group hug fun time. Not everybody wants to play that way, and that's okay.
Yeah, I can get behind that too, because I've definitely have played my group hug deck and people are like, nah, and they'll team up on me because they're not in for a 2-hour long game, So, just be aware of that. Is like sometimes people are down for some craziness and some shenanigans, but sometimes people just want to play a normal game of Magic as well. What about you, Preston?
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, also I want to add in, sometimes people have played against group hug decks that were like, oh yeah, we're all friends, and then they do something gross at the end and it feels bad to lose against. So they might not be doing it because they hate you. It's because other group hug decks have scared them. It's not personal. It's fine.
See, losing is fine. Feel bad losses are... We would like to avoid anyone feeling bad. We don't want to make anyone feel bad.
Yeah. The only thing I would add to that is we talked a lot of today about win cons, because that's something that gets overlooked in a lot of group hug decks. I've seen a lot of group hug decks from content creators, the pre-con, the original group hug pre-con, like just out in the wild, like. Sometimes people just don't have the best or most reliable win cons in their group hug deck. So, embrace the weirdness of the archetype, play all you get extra lands, you get extra cards, like do that. It's fun. It's goofy. It's embracing one of the quirks of the multiplayer singleton format of Commander. But for the love of God, please put at least a couple ways to actually win the game. Because if you get down to the mill 'em out strategy, without like Folio Fancies, I think is like a legitimate like win con via mill. I think that's like an actual thing that you can do. But if you're just like, we're just going to see who accidentally decks out first, then like, no. That's going to take forever. It's going to get really weird. So have at least a couple ways in your deck to actually close it out, protect yourself, and make sure that you're, I think one that I think it was probably Preston who mentioned it. Another card that I think does this really well is Shadrick Silverquill. Steven has a Shadrick Silverquill deck that's been on the gameplay show a couple times. And I think this is another thing that you can be thinking about with your group hug decks is do it in a way that you always come out a little bit more ahead than your opponents. That's sometimes easier with certain cards and certain commanders and stuff, but like Shadrick Silverquill, yeah, you're giving your opponents value while you're also giving yourself value, but you always just, if there's an opponent who can't make use of the creature, give them the token. If they are at 1 life, let them draw the card and lose the life. If they have no creatures, let them put the counters on their creatures, right? So there's always like that's something you can think about as well when you're building your group hug deck, is like, even if like your win cons are a little clunky or a lot of mana or they're a little slow, that's fine. But maybe just have it when you're constructing your deck, just be thinking about these kind of things of like, what can you do so that when these deals come up and you're really going all in on your group hug, that maybe you can come out a little farther ahead than your opponents will. So that's something you can think about as well. All right, guys, I think that brings us to the end of the podcast. Any final words out to the viewers?
Have fun and play Tidal Barracuda. It's a fun card.
I like that. And a reminder, we will all be at MagicCon Vegas, and my Kenrith group hug deck is one of the 8 decks. I'm not taking 8 decks. I'm taking 6 decks. One of the 6 decks I'm taking to MagicCon Vegas. So if you want to see my group hug deck, you can play against me at MagicCon Vegas, or that deck, an old version of it has been on our gameplay series on the YouTube channel. So you can scroll back and find it there. It's been played at least once on the show. Well, guys, that's it. Okay, bye. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Geek and Speak podcast. Again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And subscribing, checking out our other videos. Thanks for all the support. And let us know in the comments if there's any specific topics you want to hear us talk about. We'll make sure to get to them. We have lots of juicy topics, but we're always open to talk about whatever you guys want to hear us talk about. So we will see you guys in the next one. Bye.